And just like that, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. It's officially the start of the 2021 NFL season, and this is the NFL Week 1 DFS Slate Playbook video here on the channel where we're going to talk all things DFS for this upcoming Sunday's main slate, Week 1. Whether you're playing on DraftKings or FanDuel, I've got you covered with all of the DFS information you need to be successful this weekend. We'll talk quarterbacks, we'll talk running backs, wide receivers, and we'll talk tight ends. All the positions are covered. Are we going to spend up for Mahomes? Are we going to pay top tier dollars for the running backs, for the wide receivers? All of that will be discussed, including stacks, strategy, and where you should be allocating your money for this upcoming Sunday's main slate. So, if you're looking to succeed in DFS, if you're looking for some insight, some information, some of the best, you've come to the right spot. Stay tuned. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Yo, hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. It's been quite some time since we've put out a video here on the channel, really put out any type of content here on the channel. In fact, I think you can date us back to last season, last NFL season, where we talked about DFS for, I think, a playoff slate. That was our last video. And I apologize to you guys. It's been a crazy year, crazy offseason for football, but crazy year in general. We've all gone through a lot, right, over the last year, year and a half. Had some great family stuff happen. A lot of stuff happened in my family. So I've really just kind of taken some time off, and I apologize if you were looking for MLB content. My intention was to continue, grinding out DFS here on the channel. Baseball is probably my favorite DFS sport, but it just didn't happen this year. I didn't play a whole lot. I didn't dedicate enough time to really then turn around and put out videos for you guys, because if I'm putting out a video, I want you guys to believe that I've done the research, I've done the homework, and I'm putting up my own money, based upon the stuff that I'm giving out to you guys in terms of the players and stuff like that. So baseball just didn't happen, but we are back officially for the start of the 2021 NFL season here. Really exciting offseason, really exciting season in 2021 here getting started. So I am really excited myself. I hope you guys are too. Hopefully you're tuning in because you rely on this information and you enjoy these videos, and I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys tuning back in. I know I've gotten a couple of comments, a couple of notes there and emails and stuff saying, hey, you're going to put out some content here. So I really, really, really do appreciate that. And we are officially back here. So hopefully, again, this stuff is helpful for you guys. You can trust that if I'm going to give you guys a play or talk about anything in terms of strategy for DFS, I'm turning around and I'm doing that with my own lineups, my own money, my own hard-earned money is going into those same plays. So hopefully that transparency and that honesty is helpful for you guys, but I won't waste any more time here. You're here for one reason only, and that's Sunday's slate, tomorrow's slate, Week 1. What players are we going to play? But before we do that, we always want to start kind of with an outlook for the slate. We want to set the tone. And I want to start with one thing that's very, very important, and that's the simple fact that COVID is still out there. Whatever your thoughts are on that, it doesn't matter because it's still out there in terms of how it can affect you, your money, in DFS. And that, I mean, if you go back to last season, we had players last minute miss games. We had games get moved several slates. I think the Steelers played, they took like 17 days off when they played that Ravens game. A lot of things can happen. Now, as of right now, all looks good. A lot of vaccinated players, a lot of that stuff's out there, but we still have breakthrough cases. We have things happening. We have players in all sports testing positive regardless of the safeguards that they've put in place. So the only thing I want to say before we even get started is please, please, please pay attention. Don't just watch a video. Don't use an optimizer, hit submit, and then on Friday, and then just see what happens on Sunday. Make sure you guys are staying in tune with what is happening across the NFL in terms of players that are missing time due to COVID, injury, anything else like you normally would. As always, make sure you know that the games that you're stacking players from are on the slate because they can get moved off. So, little disclaimer there, you guys are smart. You're probably doing that already, but I do want to make sure you know that. If I give you something and it turns out to not be on the slate because of, COVID or an injury or something like that, just pay attention to that. I can't capture everything. So, let's start with the slate outlook here. What are we talking about for Week 1? It's a pretty standard regular season slate. We're talking 13 total games, whether you're playing on FanDuel or DraftKings. 13 games available tomorrow, and everything in regards to slate Week 1 is loaded with speculation. It's a very, very important point here. I just want you guys to know that. You can do as much homework in terms of data grinding as you possibly can for week one, and some things just will not matter because it's a new season. Players have moved around, players have retired, teams have revamped, new coaches, new defenses. All of that is going to come into play here. So a lot of speculation. I'm going to give you guys what I think in terms of what I can predict and focus on. The no is what I have here in terms of the goal. That's important. A lot of the players, a lot of the selections I'm going to give you guys are things that I think are more predictable than some of the other stuff that's out there. So my opinion early on, week 1, 2, and 3, really those 3 weeks, stick to what you know and what can be predicted, and that's the goal here on the channel. Another thing I want to caution you guys is relying on 2020 stats. I'm certainly going to do it. I'm going to give you guys a lot of stats in this video from previous seasons, from 2020. But just be cautious with those stats. It's helpful. It's all we really have to rely on. But in general, things can change. Obviously, players have moved around. There's been an excellent draft that just happened. There's new defensive coaches. There's defenses that might have been 32nd in the league in 2020 could turn out to be a top 10 defense. That's happened in the past. So just be careful here. We'll learn as we go. We'll take in all this data as we move down in terms of week 1 to week 2 to week 3 and on. But the early part of the season is very, very hard to predict in terms of stats. And as a result, optimizers. I want to make mention here. I use an optimizer. I will be using an optimizer going into tomorrow. But they can be inaccurate going into week 1, 2, and 3 simply because the data they rely on is from previous seasons. And the running backs that are on certain teams were not available last year. Defenses have changed. I mentioned all that already. Just something to consider. Another thing we rely on, and I think is very important, especially as the season goes on, is Vegas totals. Whether it's the spreads or the overall totals in terms of points scored, we rely on that. It's a good indicator as to where points are being projected and predicted from a very, very smart person in Vegas, right? So we like to look there. But early on, they're off. They don't know information either. Things have changed. So be careful when you look at those spreads, those totals. We'll talk about them briefly, but it's something to consider that those can be off early in the early part of the season. All of that said, this can be an advantage to you. If you're somebody that really knows football outside of just the numbers, this is where you can really do excellent. In fact, I think this is where we typically do the best, is early part of the season before a lot of the just number crunchers kind of take over and start optimizing. So all of that, very important. I think early on, be conservative. Pick the conservative plays and don't really worry about the ownership projections. Just a couple little notes there at the end. But as I mentioned, Vegas is important. It's something to look at here. I do want to focus on these Vegas totals very quickly here. 2 games available tomorrow above 50 in terms of a Vegas total, and those are definitely games that you want to take a look at. The first being Cleveland at Kansas City, the highest total on the slate at 54.5. The second being Arizona at Tennessee at 53.5. Again, a lot of games close to 50, but those are really the only 2 games that are above 50, and they are pretty significantly above 50. So Vegas is projecting a lot of points will be scored in those games. Kansas City, of the 4 teams there, projected at 30.3, by far the highest total on this entire slate. And then Tennessee at 27.5, another really, really high total there, the second highest on the slate. So Kansas City and Tennessee, from a Vegas perspective, expected to score the most amount of points. Maybe a place you want to look at. I'll give you some information on those 2 games as we move through the video, but in general, something you may want to consider and keep in mind. Other teams, Seattle, Indy, Minnesota, Atlanta, Green Bay, Buffalo, San Francisco, all teams projected above 25 as an implied team total. So again, maybe you want to keep them on your radar as teams and stacks and players because they are projected to score points from a Vegas perspective. On the other side of the coin, though, in terms of games or teams that are projected with a low total, under 22 is what I consider low for this particular slate. You got the Jets, the Chargers, Houston, Pittsburgh, Detroit, the Dolphins, and the Giants. Again, all under 22. So I'm not saying you can't take players from them. I'm not saying this is wrong. This is right. You know, Vegas could be really wrong here, and you might have something we don't. But if you want to avoid any particular teams in terms of stacks and stuff, consider that Vegas is not expecting a lot of points from those particular teams. Now let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this particular video. Really the biggest, most important position, obviously, on the field, if you're talking reality, but also for DFS, because I think this is the linchpin. This is where you get started. This is where stacks start. It's the quarterback position. And I have 2 guys here, very, very important 2 guys here. my favorite two guys on the slate, and that's Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, and really for the same reason. These guys offer a very similar profile, Kyler Murray being the more experienced, more reliable option, and Jalen Hurts being the more risky option, younger guy. But both guys, what I'm talking about in terms of predictability, both of these guys do one thing, and that's rush the ball 5, 6, 7, 8 times a game. And what does that give you? That gives you a floor for quarterbacks. Say they rush 5 times for 50 yards. That is literally 5 points guaranteed for these particular players. Will they do that? I don't know. We'll look at previous numbers and we'll try to determine if they do have a floor, which I do believe they do. But in general, something to consider, as I mentioned early on, with the unknown, the speculation that goes into the early part of the season, you want something you can predict, and I believe that both of these guys, at least in week 1, are predictable in terms of a floor, and we want to take those points where we can. So let's start with Kyler Murray. This guy is obviously expensive, $7,600 on DraftKings, $9,000 on FanDuel. So you're talking a top tier salary for a quarterback here, but much deserving. He is playing on the road in Tennessee. I talked about that game already at 53.5 for an over-under, the second highest over-under in terms of football, or in terms of a game this upcoming slate. You can see here Arizona is an underdog at +3 with a 24.5 implied team total. It's a high total and it's a close spread. A lot of boxes checked here for a DFS quarterback, right? He's on the road. Good. Check that box. He is playing as an underdog. Good. Check that box. He has a 53.5 over-under, the second highest on the slate. Really solid over-under. Good. Check that box. And a 24.5, very solid implied team total. Another good box to check for the DFS quarterback position. Not to mention, Tennessee, not a great defense, at least historically, at least in 2020. So a lot of boxes checked for Kyler Murray here. That's easily why he's my number one. He offers an elite floor. I talked about that already, how that's going to come into play with his rushing ability. And more importantly, a stat that I like to focus on in terms of what Pro Football Focus offers. And if you guys aren't signed up for Pro Football Focus, you are really, really missing out. So go check that out. But the offense and defensive line pass advantage, it sits at +39%. That's a really elite number. What does that mean? That means Kyler Murray statistically should not, and we could be wrong, but statistically, Kyler Murray should not be seeing a lot of pressure from the defensive line. His offensive line has an advantage and should protect him pretty well in this particular game. Now, I talked about rushing and how that offers a floor for him. He has averaged 8+ rushing attempts and 51+ rushing yards per game in 2020. Think about that. He basically, in 2020, guaranteed you 5 points just from his rushing abilities. We saw him rush a lot in the red zone. Will that change this year? Maybe, maybe not. The big thing is they got rid of Kenyon Drake, who was not that good. They kept Chase Edmonds, and they added James Conner. Is that an upgrade? As a Pittsburgh fan, I don't think so. James Conner's probably going to get hurt at some point, but he's healthy for week 1, at least seemingly healthy, right? I just don't think there's much of a change there. I do not think their running game got any better by adding James Conner and getting rid of Kenyon Drake. If anything, it stayed the same. It may have gotten worse. So I do not expect much to change in terms of Kyler Murray's role in the red zone, in terms of his ability to run the ball 8+ times a game. It's all going to continue to happen. Also, the matchup here is excellent. Tennessee was the 3rd worst pass rush team in 2020, according to Pro Football Focus. That's why you see that pass advantage of +39%. So they shouldn't be able to get much pressure. They did, if things change on that defensive line, so be it. We'll see what happens, but we have to rely on what we have right now. And Tennessee gave up the third most fantasy points to the quarterback position in 2020. So they gave up a lot of points regardless if you were a rushing quarterback. They're just a pretty bad defense in 2020. Hopefully that carries over into this year because we're relying on that with Kyler Murray. In addition to all of that, you're talking about a guy that has elite weapons and elite stacking options, and they're the 3rd fastest team on paper. They run a lot of plays really fast playing on the road here. So Kyler Murray, easily my favorite option. Hopefully you guys see the same here. But beyond that, if you want to save a little bit of money in a very, very similar role as Jalen Hurts, he's $6,400. So you're saving over $1,000 on DraftKings, and he's $7,700 on FanDuel. A little bit more of a savings there on FanDuel from his $9,000 counterpart in Kyler Murray. But same deal here. You got a guy playing on the road in Atlanta, solid over-under at 49. Love to see that at 50 or above. 49, we'll take that. Philadelphia is a slight underdog at +3 with a 22.8 implied team total. That implied team total isn't great. That's the only risk here. Not projected to score a lot of points in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles. Something I worry about, but hopefully Vegas is wrong here. I still like the option here. You're talking about salary savings, and I think it gives you a lot of value. In fact, I think he is the value version of Murray, and again, that's what we want. He offers that solid floor, again, with that rushing ability. Would I call it an elite floor? Not yet. We'll see how Hurts plays out. I mean, he was a rookie last year, but in general, he does give you that solid floor, and we do know he will rush the ball. The pace of play is important for the quarterback position, for the volume, the passing, wide receivers. Pace of play is very, very, very important here. And the pace of play, if you focus in on the 3 games that Jalen Hurts started last year, was a significant increase from from Wentz or anyone else that started in that season to Jalen Hurts. They move the ball much, much faster. So something you like there. They're going to run more plays with Jalen Hurts under center, and they're going to run a lot faster with Jalen Hurts under center. All good things in terms of scoring fantasy points for DFS. The offense and defensive line, I talked about it with Murray. It is an advantage here at plus 5%. Not significant, but nonetheless is an advantage, not a disadvantage. So he should be okay in the pocket. And then if you go back to 2020, we talked about the floor that he offers. He had 3 full starts. He did play a little bit in that last game. It was a fiasco in terms of them throwing the game, whatever. Besides that, the 3 full games that he started, he averaged 12 rushing attempts and 79-plus rushing yards a game. That's better than Murray. That's 8 points a game in rushing alone. He had several, I think 2 games over 300 passing yards. This dude can ball. If it's similar to last year, this dude can ball. So I really like the price tag on him. I think he offers a lot of value and a great floor. Easily my second favorite quarterback here. And then again, the matchup is an excellent matchup still. Atlanta, we all know how they were last year. He's playing in a dome, but Atlanta was bottom half of the NFL last year in coverage, and they gave up the second most fantasy points to the quarterback position. So a lot of boxes checked here for him. He gives you that floor. We looked at the stats from last year. He offers a value price tag. He's on the road, solid over-under. It's going to be a close game, and he's facing a team that really can't play defense. So I do like Jalen Hurts here as my second favorite quarterback. Moving on to the running backs here, and we'll try to pick up pace. I spent a little bit of extra time there on quarterbacks because they're so important, and I think that was the most predictable position right now for week 1. Again, I could be wrong, but we'll go with that. So running backs right now, I'm looking at Alvin Kamara and Raheem Mostert as my favorite 2 running backs on the slate. Yeah, big thing here is I'm giving you a guy that's expensive, and I'm giving you a guy that's reasonable. I would call Mostert reasonable. But Kamara's 8,600 on DraftKings, 7,700 on FanDuel. He's playing at home versus Green Bay with an asterisk, 49.5 over-under, so big over-under there. New Orleans is a underdog at home, again asterisk, at +4 with a 23 implied team total. Now, I mentioned asterisk. It's because they're not actually playing in New Orleans. They're playing in Jacksonville. So basically, both of these teams are on the road. It's just who's wearing the home jersey, right? So I do like Kamara here. He's probably, I'm never going to not tell you to play McCaffrey. Cook is in a great spot. Actually, play McCaffrey every week if you can. But in general, of the higher price guys, I love Kamara this week. I think Winston, now the starter, is a very, very good positive thing for Kamara. It doesn't take away any of his rushing, attempts, things like that, that maybe Hill would. So I do like Winston as the quarterback in terms of the output that could lead for Kamara. In addition to that, New Orleans just recently cut Murray, who's the backup running back, a very solid backup running back. I believe it was salary related. He wouldn't take a cut. But nonetheless, that's a big move for Alvin Kamara, a guy that everyone thinks just catches the ball. No, he does rush the ball a lot and should see a little bit of an uptick here, you would think, because Murray got 5+ touches a game in 2020. Will they get distributed between other running backs and other backups? Yeah, of course. But 2 or 3 touches is a big deal for someone like Alvin Kamara, and maybe we see that little bit of an uptick here without Murray. There is a big, big offense and defensive line run advantage here at plus 43%. That's one of the reasons I love Kamara, meaning the offensive line for New Orleans is at a huge advantage over the D-line, the projected D-line of Green Bay. And we saw last year, Green Bay did really struggle versus the run, but Kamara obviously offers so much more than just the run. He's such a great weapon out of the backfield. In addition to that, out of the backfield, I just mentioned, catches the ball a lot. You see this guy with double-digit targets continuously. But the thing I want to talk about is they don't have Michael Thomas. And what does that mean for Alvin Kamara? You wouldn't think much, but you see a 28%. This is my own calculation, by the way, so let's see how it plays out. 28% target boost without Thomas. I should say without. I have with there. But in general, it's without Thomas on the field, Michael Thomas. You say a 28% boost for targets for Alvin Kamara. If you go back week 2 to week 8, that's when Thomas missed time. In 2020, he averaged 9+ targets a game. I believe that's up from 7 targets a game. That's where I got the 28%. So you see a boost of 2 targets a game when Michael Thomas wasn't in the lineup in 2020. It's a really, really good thing. We're trying to find points where we can, trying to predict where we can. Green Bay, as I mentioned, they did definitely struggle in 2020 versus the run. You see them giving up the 5th most fantasy points per game in 2020 for the running back position. So I do really like Kamara here. We'll see how ownership plays out, but he is probably my favorite high-priced running back on the slate. Again, if you're going to play McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook, I don't blame you. We'll talk about them at the end of the video here, but I do like Kamara for sure. I'm going to highlight him as my favorite back. And then on the other side of the coin here, I like Raheem Mostert, and I think it's a little bit of a risky play because of Trey Sermon. I have it marked there at the bottom. We'll see how much he takes in terms of a load early on. He's their prized early draft running back. But I think he's going to be eased in over the course of a season. You saw players like Swift in that over 2020. They don't come out week 1 and get a 25 carry load. Can it happen? Of course. This is DFS. Some stuff's unpredictable. But I do like the price tag on Raheem here at $5,800 on DraftKings, $75 on FanDuel. He's playing at home. We like that for running backs. Versus Detroit with a 46 over-under. The big thing here for running backs, you like them playing at home and you like them as big favorites. And San Francisco definitely is here at 7.5, a 7.5 point favorite over Detroit with a 26.3 implied T total. So you see the check mark here. Elite matchup, check. Home running back, check. Solid totals, check. Heavy favorite, check. It's everything you want out of a running back. The only downside, again, is how much he'll split his time with other running backs like Trey Sermon. I do think on that note there, that he will still, regardless, even if they have a 60-40 split or a 50-50 split, I think they're going to run the ball a lot in this game. Detroit is really bad versus the run. We know San Francisco wants to run the ball. In 2021, their focus, you can see here, is a run-first team. They got away from that last year. I think they want to be a team that's 55% run, 45% pass, and they didn't have much of that last year. I think they want to go back here. He does offer some salary relief, especially from a player like Kamara. The offense and defensive line advantage is enormous at plus 69%. That is the highest on the slate. So again, I think this is just an excellent matchup regardless of whatever running backs in the backfield here. Detroit couldn't stop a soul in terms of running backs in 2020. They averaged 1.7 yards before contact. That's not per carry. That's before contact. So I should change that. But in general, that's a massive, massive number. Basically, guys are going almost 2 yards before somebody touches them. Detroit was second in the NFL last year in terms of fantasy points given up to the running back position per game. So, again, excellent matchup. I still think you're going to see 15, 20 touches, maybe more, hopefully more out of Mostert. But at that price tag, you can live with a little bit of a timeshare here split. So, I do like him, my second favorite running back. Moving on to wide receivers here. I'll talk about some of these receivers later on too, but I do like Calvin Ridley as my number 1 receiver on this particular slate. A little bit of a higher price, obviously. It's $7,900 on DraftKings, $81 on FanDuel. He's playing at home versus Arizona, 49 over under. Atlanta is a favorite at 25 at -3 with a 25.8 implied team total. Now, this guy, obviously a great comeback player in terms of if you're going to stack Kyler Murray, trying to come back with Calvin Ridley on the other side of the field here. That's always a strategy you want in terms of stacks. But in terms of Calvin Ridley, all things aside, in terms of stacks, he's an excellent option. He's now the number 1 guy in Atlanta without Julio Jones. He pretty much was the number 1 guy last year with Jones. He's an incredible receiver, having an incredible early part of his career. He garnished 25% of the team targets in 2020. If you don't know about team targets, 25% is an absolute elite number. He's getting a quarter of the targets. So if they throw the ball 40 times, he's getting at least 10 targets. You want to see that for sure. He averaged 11 targets a game without Julio Jones last year. So if you want to take into consideration when Julio was on the field, he got 9.5 in terms of a target share, or in terms of targets per game. When Julio wasn't on the field, that bumped up to 11 per game. So we should see that team target share go up a little bit here without Julio Jones now in Atlanta, period. He had 41% of the team total air yards. That's 5th in the NFL in 2020. Again, Talking about a guy that just eats up yards downfield for the Atlanta team here. 25% of the team targets, 41% of the team air yards. Almost half the team air yards go to him. He had a 14.3 ADOT, average depth of target, meaning that was number one in the NFL. Meaning not only is he getting a lot of targets, not only is he eating up a lot of the team air yards, but he's getting targets, high-value targets downfield, not just those little dinks and dunks. He's actually seeing targets come to him downfield. Number one in the NFL. He had 26 red zone targets too, third in the NFL in 2020. You're starting to see why I like this guy. He basically gets everything you want out of a receiver. Red zone targets, high amount of red zone targets, top 3 in the NFL. Leads the NFL in terms of average depth of target, has a 41% team air yard percent, and 25%, a quarter of his team targets go to him, and now doesn't have Julio Jones. So I really like Calvin Ridley here. Not to mention Philadelphia's secondary, really not good last year, ranked 22nd overall. We'll see if it gets better, but I really don't think it does. I really like Calvin Ridley here. T. Higgins is the other guy I want to mention. So I'm trying to save you some money here. $4,700 on DraftKings, $6,000 on FanDuel. He's playing at home versus Minnesota. They have a 47 over-under. Cincinnati is a slight favorite, or I should say a slight underdog at +3, I believe, +3. Regardless, you might want to check into that. It doesn't matter. I'm playing T. Higgins. 22.3 implied team total. He does offer some value salary. That's why I wanted to put him up on the board here. He was excellent in 2020, both with Burrow and without Burrow. Burrow led the NFL in terms of volume last year when he was actually in. I suspect this year they're going to have heavy pass volume again. Cincinnati's just not a very good team, doesn't have a very good defense. They're going to throw the ball a lot even at home. So we do want to target this team, in terms of receivers, in terms of Burrow, in terms of that passing attack. And T. Higgins is one of those guys. They have an extreme offense and defense aligned run disadvantage. I wanted to point that out because that feeds into that suspicion of a heavy pass volume, simply because I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball versus Minnesota very effectively, even at home. Minnesota had the worst pass rush in 2020. Absolute worst, dead last pass rush. So they're not going to be able to run the ball, but they're going to be able to pass the ball because they're going to be able to sit in the pocket a lot. I like that. I like the fact that plays into the receivers here like T. Higgins. He saw 21% of the team targets in 2020. Again, focusing on the fact that Joe Burrow wasn't a part of that team for a large majority of that year. I think these numbers just really equal out to T. Higgins setting up for a great year. But more importantly, he's $4,700 on DraftKings. So how much do you really need? I think he's in a great spot to explode, but also gives you a little bit of a salary relief should he not do that. And then last but not least here, if you want to talk about Minnesota secondary, not very good. They weren't great. They weren't bad. Ranked 18th last year in terms of Pro Football Focus, their premium stats and ranking system. So T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, two of the top options for me on this particular slate. Last but not least here, we want to talk about tight ends. I want to mention Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts. Travis Kelce, if you can afford to play him this weekend, just do it. I mean, that's kind of my opinion on him. It's always hard for me. I don't typically spend up at tight end. I don't even know how much I'm going to have of Travis Kelce, but it's important for me to be transparent. I'm going to try to fit Travis Kelce every which way I can. I just don't know with the stacks that I'm looking at if it's going to actually happen. But definitely in the Jalen Hurts style stacks, you can probably get some more expensive players like Travis Kelce should you save a little bit on running back. But regardless, if you can pay for Travis Kelce, do it. $8,300 on DraftKings, $85 on FanDuel. He's playing at home versus Cleveland, 54.5 over-under. The most projected points to be scored in a game by Vegas on this slate. We talked about that. Kansas City, a pretty big favorite at -6. Huge total, though, at 30.3 projected implied team total points for the Chiefs. Cleveland, in general, historically has not been able to stop tight ends. If you don't believe me, just go backwards and look at 2020, 2019, probably even 2018. Their linebackers have been just really bad. They're just not able to stop most of anything across the middle of the field. And when I talk about tight ends, like obviously if you're a team that does not have a tight end, you're probably not scoring a lot of points. But when they play Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, elite-style tight ends, they get torched, absolutely torched by tight ends. So I want to focus in on that. I think Travis Kelce, as an elite option, is just in an elite spot, and the two equal play him, basically. They allowed, in terms of Cleveland, 15-plus fantasy points per game last season. That was the third most in the NFL. So, again, trying to support that historically bad defense versus a tight end position. If you look back even to the last time the Chiefs played Cleveland in the playoffs last year, Travis Kelce ripped them for 28 DraftKings points. So, I mean, there's the proof in the pudding right there. He averages 10-plus targets a game more often than not, even in blowouts. Look here, 13 out of 18 weeks in 2020, the dude got 10-plus targets. You're not even getting that out of elite receivers. He has 22 red zone targets. That's 8th overall in the NFL. And he has a quarter of the target share for the Chiefs. Everybody knows who Travis Kelce is. I don't have to explain to you why to play him, but if you can this weekend, my suggestion would be try to pay up for him. If you want to save money, though, Kyle Pitts is an option. I'm sure he's going to have 99% ownership because everybody loves Kyle Pitts, and he's super cheap this weekend. He's $4,400 on DraftKings, $6K on FanDuel, playing at home versus Philly, 49 over-under, Atlanta -3 as a home favorite in a 25.8 implied team total. Same reason with Calvin Ridley, right? If you want to come back with a player against the stack, if you want to stack the whole game, Kyle Pitts is an option at a really, really low price tag. Likely going to be the lowest salary you're going to see out of this guy all season. Should his hype be real? I should preface it with that. There's a lot of hype around this guy. He's extremely athletic, did an incredible job at Florida, just absolutely terrorizing from the tight end position. So we'll see how it plays out. There's a lot of hype around him, but you can expect if this dude turns out to be the dude he's supposed to be, his price is going to go up very, very fast. Expect heavy pass volume from Atlanta. Their running back situation is just shitty. I'll put it to you that way. I don't expect them to actually win this game, so they should pass a lot. I expect heavy pass volume, and Kyle Pitts will be a part of that. That's why they got him, right? Really didn't make sense to me. I don't know why they took a tight end. I mean, he's a phenomenal talent, I guess. That's for another day. But regardless, Kyle Pitts is going to be a part of that heavy pass volume. This game is high scoring. It's going to be a close game. I mentioned I think they're going to actually lose this game, so they're probably going to be playing from behind a little bit or at times. Athletically, this dude is a monster, right? Everybody knows about him. He's leaps and bounds, though, above the tight ends in the same price range. And that's the key here. At $4,400, the guys that he is around in terms of athletic ability and just generally being a pass catcher, he destroys them. So will that play out? No, we don't know yet. But in general, that's something to consider. The price tag of what he is priced at, it just makes sense to play Kyle Pitts this weekend. He's a bring-back option. I talked about that with any types of hurt stack, and he should see significant offensive targets in terms of target share. So we talked about a quarter of the targets going to Ridley. Maybe that number gets bumped up a little bit without Julio Jones. This guy probably is going to see 15-20%, again, if it plays out how they're talking him up. So that's huge for a $4,400 DraftKings tight end. And then the Philly linebacker is something to focus in on. Can they cover this guy? I don't think many can cover this guy, but in general, their linebackers are ranked 29th in 2020 by Pro Football Focus. So it's not like they have the guys in place anyway. Something new for this year, I want to talk about stacks because it is important. I think this will be helpful to you guys. If not, just let me know in the comments. But going back to the quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, the stacks are quite different, right? Kyler Murray's stack is very, very expensive. Jalen Hurts' stack is very affordable, and it results in you being able to afford different types of players at other positions. But I wanted to talk about the options that are available for each stack. So for Kyler Murray, basically in order, you're stacking DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, pretty much, if I played 100 Kyler Murrays, 99 of them have DeAndre Hopkins, 98 of them. After that, I think the order in which I prefer players is A.J. Green, who's really, really cheap, and then Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. So Moore is interesting. A lot of people are talking about him. They drafted him high. They're talking about how they want to get him touches, whatever that means, 5+ times a game. We'll see how that plays out. We've all been burned by situations and coaches talking about players before. But in general, I wanted to talk about Kyler Murray, obviously stacked with DeAndre Hopkins. If you go number 2, it's A.J. Green. And then take your pick between Kirk and Moore. You guys can make the decision there. Obviously, Moore saves you a little bit more money. But in general, that's kind of the ranking system. In terms of the comeback players, so players on the other team that you want to stack, not stack, but go against your stack to kind of take care of that correlation there. And how that works, I'll do this in this video only. So Kyler Murray, you have your stack of 2 or 3 players from Arizona. Great. You need those 3 players to go off. If they're going off, you need that game to stay competitive. So naturally, the correlation is to take a player from the other team Sometimes you stack a couple players from the other team. But in general, then you're rooting for a more correlated type of game, a high-scoring game, where Kyler Murray, Hopkins, and A.J. Green go off, and also Derrick Henry goes off, or A.J. Brown goes off. It all kind of flows together. So guys that you would consider from Tennessee, obviously Derrick Henry in a great spot playing at home, slight home favorite running back. A.J. Brown, phenomenal talent. And then Julio Jones, a really attractive price tag. If he's healthy, $6,800, $7,000 is just too cheap. So take your pick. Those guys, you want to fit them in around that stack to get that correlation. On the other side of the coin here, Jalen Hurts, pretty cheap, right? $6,476 on FanDuel. Jalen Reagor is $3,700 and Devontae Smith is $4,500. I'm going to go Jalen first because I like the Jalen. No, but for real, if you go back to last year, the 3 starts, if I pronounce it right, if not, correct me please in the comments, Reagor, he did very well. I think he had averaged around 7 targets a game when Hurts started. So I think it's a little more predictable that he should see some good targets from Hurts if they're going to be passing. And then Devonta Smith is the new toy, right? He's the young stud receiver. So obviously still at that price tag of $4,500, very, very affordable. Basically, those guys together equal Hopkins. So you can see where I'm going with this. And then you have the tight ends. So you have Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is like criminally priced, but he did not do very well last year. Hopefully he's healthy. We saw him in preseason get a lot of targets from Hurts to Ertz. But regardless, that's the stack there. In order of preference for me, it goes Jalen, Devonta, and then take your pick between Dallas and Zach. On the other side of the field, you do want to come back again, as I mentioned, for that correlation. Calvin Ridley, I like Russell Gage, actually, and Kyle Pitts. Take your pick. I talked about 2 of them already. I had to. I would have saved it because of this slide, but Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts stand out to me as excellent plays this weekend. I'll be playing them even outside of a Jalen Hurts Philadelphia stack, but definitely, guys, you want to come back against the stack there. And then Russell Gage, a little bit of a savings there for money. I think he's going to do good this year. I think as an inside receiver, when Julio was out last year, he did pretty good, and now it's his opportunity to actually be a full-time starter. So those 3 guys are guys you want to consider coming back against the Jalen Hurts stack. So that's the stacks in terms of, hopefully those are helpful for you guys. Please let me know in the comments if that was helpful, if you want me to skip that slide, whatever. Other highlights, though, I know this video is dragging on. It always happens. It's week 1. But obviously the guys I just gave you, I gave you like 6 to 8 players. Those aren't my only players. I'm going to be playing a lot of different players here. Those are my core players, but in terms of other guys, I do like Aaron Rodgers this weekend. I'm still trying to decide on him. I do like Ryan Fitzpatrick, only downside he's playing at home. Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, I did not tell you to play them. Play those guys. Dalvin Cook is in an incredible spot. It's bad for me to always say don't take a guy on the road, which Minnesota's playing on the road. But Dalvin Cook is, in an incredible spot. They should kill Cincinnati, and Cincinnati can't, defend a soul on defense. So Dalvin Cook in a great spot. I'm going to play as much Christian McCaffrey as I can. His price is under $10,000 on DraftKings. In my opinion, anytime he's under $10,000, just play him. Could things change? They got Sam Darnold. They could. I think they're going to be better as an offense. He's healthy. I like Christian McCaffrey as always. James Robinson, another back I really like for Jacksonville this year. Had an excellent, underrated season last year, and then ETN got hurt this year, so James Robinson should be the only guy in that backfield. But he's in an excellent matchup this week. I do like James Robinson for Jacksonville. Damian Harris, a sneaky spot here. Sonny Michel is out. I like him for New England. I think as a lower mid-tier price running back, he's in an excellent spot. Mac Jones starting. They're probably going to try to rely on the run as much as possible. But the situation always with New England running backs is the situation with New England running backs, so be careful there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I talked about Travis Kelce. I do like Edwards-Helaire. Cleveland has struggled. Historically they've struggled every possible way, but they do struggle versus tight ends, and they do struggle versus the running back position and stopping the run. So I do like Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week. I think he's going to be a lower-owned running back from a higher-scoring game playing at home. Big favorite. All the numbers and check marks and check boxes you need for a running back are met with CEH, so I do like him there. Calvin Ridley, talked about him already. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, Washington, really like him. Excellent matchup this week, going against a pretty bad secondary. Playing at home, though. Julio Jones, talked about him in that comeback stack, a guy that's probably underpriced. It'll be interesting to see how Julio Jones plays out this season. Is he going to go kind of, even if he goes close to where he used to be, he's not going to be the Julio Jones of 2011, 12, but in general, he's got to be better than last year, I would think so. So Julio Jones is probably a little underpriced. And then some value plays here at the end. I talked about Russell Gage already. I think he's a value play. Marquez Callaway for New Orleans is going to be very chalky, very, very low price tag on him for New Orleans if you want to take him, take a shot at that Green Bay defense. And then Marvin Jones Jr., another Jacksonville player I'm interested in this weekend. Again, really low price tag. These guys are simply value plays that I think you should consider into your lineups to help you save some salary. But in general, those are the other highlights. Hopefully, again, this is helpful for you guys. Hopefully, this video covered enough that you guys can, confidently start setting some lineups going into tomorrow. I do use an optimizer. It's in the description of this video if you guys want to check it out. It's helpful because it does support the channel if you do check it out, if you do sign up, all that good stuff. But in general, Daily Fantasy Nerd, excellent optimizer. I've used it for years. I will be using it to build lineups going into tomorrow. You can do a bunch of different things with it. I'll leave it at that. It's definitely something you want to consider moving forward. I mentioned week one optimizers are not the greatest, but the only way to succeed at NFL DFS, really all DFS, is to use an optimizer at some point. So as the data starts to come in and gets more accurate, you're going to want to sign up for an optimizer. And that really that really caps it, man. I mean, hopefully, again, you guys think these videos are helpful. I know some of you have reached out. I do really appreciate that. It was not my intention to step away for so long. If you guys haven't done so already, please make sure you like these videos. It's the free, easy way to help support a channel like this. I don't make any money off any of this. I don't have enough subscribers or anything like that. So please consider sharing the video. Please consider subscribing because I'd like to get there. I'd like to make $1 on a video or something one day from YouTube. But for now, this helps me get prepared. More importantly, I can share my thoughts and hopefully helps you guys get prepared. So give these videos a thumbs up. Make sure you like them. Check me out at NoHuddleFS over on Twitter. I do post stuff, changes, random things over there from time to time if there's any type of update. But more importantly, if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you like them, and then go down in the comments, leave me some comments. I'd like to open it up for some engagement, some comments. If I've missed anything, mispronounced a name, I've done that from time to time, and you guys have called me out. But anything else, just leave down in the comments. I'm really excited for 2021. Again, hopefully these videos are helpful for you guys, and hopefully you guys, kick ass tomorrow in DFS, Week 1 DFS. So stay tuned. More videos will be coming. Good luck. Best of luck tomorrow, and let's take down some tournaments. Talk to you all soon.